Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Ringside Regression. My name is George. Jack, of course, is with me as always. And this week, we're going to take a break from the off-season outlook series that we've been doing, and we're going to talk about the first round because that is happening right now. I guess we can also talk about Mike Sullivan getting fired. That just happened. That was yesterday, today, this
This
morning.
morning.
This morning, yeah. We're recording this on Monday, so it'll be yesterday morning when this comes out. But yeah, I guess we can start with that. Mike Sullivan there for 10 years, which is an extremely long time for a head coach. It felt like this was probably going to be the end of the road for him in Pittsburgh. I have zero doubt that he's going to not get a job this summer. He's probably instantly becomes the best coach on the market, I think. What were kind of your reactions when you heard this news?
My reaction to this news was you're looking at the 2025-2026 New York Rangers future head coach the second that he was fired.
Yeah, it sounds about right.
I think that the Rangers are going to hire him, and that's my prediction.
Yeah, I don't hate
Great
that.
tenure in Pittsburgh. Sucks after 10 years, but sometimes things just expire. His shelf life is done with Pittsburgh. They're transitioning to a new core eventually once Crosby and Malkin and Letang on the way out. Good to see them maybe bring in somebody younger, possibly, and try and rebuild with a new core. There's no retooling. This is long gone. And it's time for a rebuild based on some of the destructive moves they've made to try and stay competitive. And that's kind of what happens, right? You look at a team like Tampa Bay, who could have held on to all their pieces, and like Pittsburgh didn't make any changes, and what they did instead was they decided to retool and make some tough decisions. And yes, while those decisions are tough, you look and they stay competitive for longer. Or you can be in Pittsburgh's boat and sort of diminish the fact that you're on the way out and your core is aging and do nothing about it, and now you reap the repercussions. So that's my 2 cents on it.
I definitely don't think I would definitely wouldn't blame Mike Sullivan for what's happened in Pittsburgh.
Definitely not.
But it does feel like he needed a change of scenery, and the team needed a new voice in the room too. So I don't think this is really a move. Like when it said that, I think like the report was that they mutually decided to part ways, and never is that actually the case. But in this situation, I think it actually might have been the case, where both parties just decided that they needed a fresh start. And I mean, obviously Mike Sullivan's going to get hired immediately. I think that there's a bunch of teams that should be calling on him. I think the Flyers should give him a look. I think the Rangers, like you said, should give him a look. I think if Buffalo wants a new head coach, that's not a bad option either. So there's definitely going to be a bunch of suitors out there. I do like the Rangers fit, especially if he wants to be on an immediately competitive team. That feels like it might be the place. But again, maybe the off ice management stuff kind of scares him away, especially for somebody who's going to be the best candidate on the board. But on ice, I think that fits really good. So I don't hate that. But yeah, as for Pittsburgh's head coach, I don't really know where they want to go here. Kyle Dubas, in his one opportunity to hire a head coach, went outside the box and hired Sheldon Keefe. I guess outside the box in terms of not a recycled NHL name, but somebody that was in his inner circle. So obviously Sheldon Keefe has a job right now, so that can't be the option. But it'll be interesting to see if or kind of where he decides to go in terms of a head coaching job. But Pittsburgh's an interesting team this summer. I think there's a lot of potential ways that they could go, and that is a little intriguing. So eventually we're gonna we haven't covered them yet. We're gonna cover them eventually,
very soon, next couple weeks.
Yeah, so that'll be one of the discussions that we have. Will probably be the head coaching vacancy, unless they have somebody that they're basically ready to hire. But I doubt that's the case.
And one last note on Sullivan I want to make before we transition into our round one check-in is that I think this is going to be very similar to a Jim Montgomery scenario we saw with St. Louis this year. I think Mike Sullivan's one of the best coaches in the NHL. That's why he was tenured for so long with the Pittsburgh Penguins.
Yeah.
And I think wherever he ends up going, whether it is the Rangers and maybe one of those emerging teams like maybe the Anaheim Ducks or the Boston Bruins could use him as well.
Yeah.
I know Joe Sacco's job is up in the air as well. So I think wherever he goes, he's going to make immediate impact, and just kind of like Montgomery did. So if he ends up with a team like Anaheim, don't be shocked if they jump in the standings next year. I wouldn't definitely consider them as a potential wildcard team if Mike Sullivan's behind the bench for them in the fall.
Yeah, I think Anaheim's and I didn't really think of the Ducks. The Ducks are really interesting. Seattle's kind of interesting too. Now that I'm just thinking about
Yeah,
the Western teams, I think Seattle's roster construction um, is interesting. Again, maybe it's too much of a mess for Mike Sullivan. He's really gonna have the pick of wherever he wants to go. I think pretty much. I mean, Chicago's looking for a head coach too, so they just lost out on. I forget which candidate they were interviewing, but they were really far along in the
Denver's coach.
process. Yes, and then he backed out. So um, yeah, I think Chicago would be really interesting if he wants to work with a young team like that with somebody like Connor Bedard. So um, there really is like there's so many options. He's going to have the choice of whatever's most valuable to him and how much of a leeway he wants. Because again, one of those rebuilding teams probably gives him a couple extra years of safety as well. So who knows? But it's definitely an interesting wrinkle that popped up and not super shocking, but we'll have to see where it goes. So, jumping into the playoffs right now, we're gonna start with let's start with the Pacific. Why not? Just to mix it up a little bit. Minnesota and Vegas is the first series that we're gonna cover here, and immediately, like the Minnesota Wild have looked significantly better than I thought they would. I have to give them credit for that. They have come out even in the losses. I think they've looked pretty solid. And I mean, Kaprizov looks fully healthy. There's obviously it's the playoff injury heal magic that Vegas has used so often. But he's looked really good. He's reminding everybody why he was in the MVP conversation before he got hurt. And Minnesota as a whole, I think, I mean, they've been scary for Vegas, and Vegas has had to squeak out a couple wins. I feel like they kind of stole one in Game 4. I don't know how concerned you are about Vegas. As my cup pick, I'm a little concerned about Vegas right now. But overall, I mean, Minnesota's been super impressive.
Yeah, definitely. And I mentioned too, I believe in our preview that even though I thought Vegas was going to win this in 5 or 6, which is still possible, they could still win
Yeah.
this in 6 games. I said the only reason I'm high on Minnesota to win a game or two is because of Kirill Kaprizov, and I think we're seeing that Kaprizov-Boldy connection is just electric.
Yeah.
Some of the goals they've scored in this series have been absolute highlight reels. Some of the passes Kaprizov has made and put on Boldy's tape are second to none. And I think too we're seeing a bit of a maybe unlucky series as well for Vegas. They've been extremely dominant in the 5-on-5 shot
Yeah.
attempts and like Corsi and expected goals. They've been controlling all that, but Minnesota has nearly doubled them in 5-on-5 goals. So maybe a little luck will swing going back to Vegas for Game 5. And I definitely think the Knights have just been a little unlucky.
Yeah, that's true too. But I mean, in the playoffs, that those 1-2 game bounces are to make all the difference. We're going to talk about a series later where that's been a couple series later where that's really been the case. But I think this has been the case in this one as well. Has there been a player that benefited more from the Four Nations than Matt Boldy? Like since the Four Nations, he's been unreal, and I think he really benefited from being on a big stage like that and in those kind of big moments, even though he didn't have a significant role. But since he's come back, he's been huge for the Minnesota Wild, and especially in these playoffs, he's been fantastic. So he's somebody that I'm really looking at as like a really good breakout candidate for next year, even more so than he's already broken out. But he's definitely getting a lot more main stage love, and the post Four Nations break has been good for a lot of players. We've seen a lot of players who didn't make those teams get a lot of love, but Matt Boldy is somebody that I think really used that experience to help him, and
Yeah,
I think it made an impact.
absolutely. And I think Boldy's been one of those more underappreciated quote unquote stars that we've had for the last year or two in the NHL that no one really talks about. I think he's already at that elite level for a top line winger, but just doesn't really get the full recognition, at least until the Four Nations face off. And now
Yep.
obviously performing in the playoffs with the Wild on a big stage is also huge for his reputation as well. So definitely expecting the break probably 80, 90 points next year if he plays with
Yeah.
Kaprizov for most of the year.
Yeah, especially if Kaprizov's healthy too. That'll be a big factor. Marner plays for the Minnesota Wild, so
Where did that come from?
I was mentioning throw Mitch Marner around everywhere. But yeah, mid series predictions on this one. What do you think?
I'll go Vegas in 7, just based on
Yeah,
these
I'm gonna go
first
Vegas
four
in 7
games.
too.
I think Minnesota definitely claws out another game, but I think Vegas will pull it out with home ice and just based on some of the dominant play they've had. They've been more of the dictator in the series, and Minnesota's been more of the responders. So I
Yeah,
think Vegas pulls it out in 7. I think it'll be a close game though. Like I think it's coming down to like a 1 goal game, maybe overtime in game 7.
yeah, I agree. So moving on to the Kings Oilers series, which again has just been uh, this has been fun. I mean, if you're not staying up late watching Kings Oilers at like 11 p.m. or whatever it is wherever you live, um, you're missing out because man, like that. First of all, that 6-5 game, game 1 was maybe the best game of the playoffs so far. Um, and the rest of the games have been really fun. Game 2 and 3 were kind of more dominated by one side, but then game 4 again, the 3-1 comeback by the Oilers was really key. It's incredible to see how much home ice has played a factor in this. I think the Oilers especially have taken advantage of being able to get the McDavid line out against the Kopitar line, which is weird to say because like Anze Kopitar is this great shutdown player for so long, but the line's just not fast enough to keep up with the McDavid line, and you saw that in game 3 and 4 especially. This is really serious, but I think matchups have been the biggest thing because you've seen the swings for both teams at home. I honestly think this could just be one of those series where the home team wins every game. Like that's kind of what it feels like right now, just because of how important that last change has been in the first 4 games.
I agree with you. I'm gonna shift my series prediction from LA in 6 to LA to 7, just because, like you said, I think every
Yeah,
home game is gonna be won by the home team in this series. It's been really entertaining. Arguably, for me at least, it's been the most entertaining first round series we've seen so far.
I think so. Yeah,
I mean, just some of the back and forth play, the comeback, just seeing how dominant Leon Draisaitl and Connor McDavid are in the playoffs, and then even seeing some of the LA Kings guys show up, like Adrian Kempe and
Kempe's been
Anze
so good.
Kopitar. And I mean, just to see the Los Angeles crowd in games 1 and 2 when they were scoring those first opening goals, that place
Mhm.
was electric.
Yeah,
3 years in a row, you lose to this Edmonton Oilers team and you come out firing on all cylinders up 2-0. That must have been so exciting for their fans. And I really hope they get it done because losing to a team 4 years in a row is not fun. So, and I think once they make it past the Oilers, I think we see maybe a bit of a little insanity run from Los Angeles.
it's possible, and we talked about that a little bit in our round 1 preview. How like this could be the Washington over Pittsburgh kind of 2017 series where it's like you finally slay the dragon and you're able to take that momentum, and especially with how vulnerable Vegas has looked at times in the Minnesota series and even Minnesota as a potential second round opponent. Like it feels more and more like whoever wins this series has a legitimate shot to win in that second round because I think the Oilers and Kings have been the 2 best teams on that side of the bracket thus far, and it'll be really interesting, especially if that home ice factor plays for either of those teams. Obviously, if Vegas wins, they'll be at home, and if Minnesota wins, then whoever wins between Edmonton and LA will have that advantage. So it'll be interesting to see how much of a factor that plays in, just because it's been such a key thing. Like the matchup's been so key in the series. I kind of want to go Kings in 7 now instead of my Oilers pick. I still think this one probably goes 7, but just the unless the Oilers can figure out a way to get the matchups they want in LA, and we'll see what Game 5 looks like. So like that'll be a big indicator of that. It feels more and more like the Kings win this in 7, just based on that.
Yeah, and I even think you could argue that whoever wins this series has a very direct path to even the Stanley Cup final, as
Yeah.
even the teams on the other side of the bracket in the Central have all shown some flaws, like which we'll get into, but I think LA and Edmonton have definitely looked the 2 strongest teams in the Western Conference so far, arguably.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. I think there's been enough flaws, especially in the Central teams, that's probably the case. So speaking of those Central teams, we have the Jets Blues series, and this is really the tale of two halves. You have the first 2 games in Winnipeg, which were very close and super competitive, and then they shifted to St. Louis, and the Blues just kind of figured out how to break down this Jets offense. And the home ice advantage has been big in that series. We saw Connor Hellebuyck get pulled twice. It's just been a disaster for Winnipeg, and actually a fun well, not fun for Jets fans, but the stat that I saw was since the loss in 2019 to the Blues, as soon as the Jets lose a game in the playoffs, they lose 4 straight every single year. They lost 4 straight to Montreal in 2020. They lost 4 straight in 2021. Lost 4 straight in 2022 to Colorado, and they're down. They've obviously lost 2 straight now to the St. Louis Blues after losing that first game. So I think Game 5 kind of determines who wins the series, honestly. If Winnipeg can't go home and put together a good performance, then it's going to be really hard to go to St. Louis, where they've just been unbeatable for the last 2 months, and try to win one there too. And this feels like a team where the extra game off might actually be, or the extra day off might actually be a disadvantage because of all the noise that's going to go on in Winnipeg now. And we've already seen it. There's been plenty of outlets that have talked about potentially starting Eric Comrie in Game 5. I wouldn't do that, but it's the noise is already there, and I think the extra day off might actually be bad for the Jets, especially being at home and having to every time you turn on your TV to see that kind of narrative. But yeah, St. Louis they kept it close in the first 2 games, and really could have won either of those games. They were in both, and then they went home and just absolutely dominated. And I'd be worried if I'm Winnipeg at this point. I think Game 5, like I said, is going to be the determining factor in this one, in my opinion.
And I think this series has really illustrated the power of coaching in the NHL.
Yeah.
St. Louis, they remained in those first 2 games, even though they lost them, like you said. But Jim Montgomery has done wonders for them. As even we mentioned in the earlier segment with coaching with Mike Sullivan, Jim Montgomery's figured the St. Louis Blues team out. And man, did they look dominant in these last 2 games. And I think they win this in 6. I think they go on and win the next 2 games, to be honest with you. I think they've solved Winnipeg. I think Connor Hellebuyck looks extremely defeated once again in the playoffs, which is really unfortunate to see. I think he's the best regular season goalie in the world, but time and time again, he's proven to be a disaster come playoff time. And there's only so many passes I'm willing to give. If you keep allowing goals like this in a playoff series at this rate, then I just can't trust you in the net when it comes to a playoff series, because it's an entirely new beast compared to the regular season.
Yeah. And I mean, like, even some of the goals in the last 2 games, like I wouldn't put all on him. I think the Jets, like, the team in front of him has really kind of shut down too. And
yeah,
I don't know. Again, maybe that's like, I don't know what the answer is for that, but like I definitely don't, like, even in the Colorado series, like obviously the goals against the numbers didn't look great, but like there was a lot of situations in that series last year where I wouldn't even say that a lot of the goals were his fault, but at the same time, like, if you're going to be in the conversation for the Vezina every year and for the Hart Trophy this year, and you're going to be like, you want to be regarded as like the Connor McDavid of your position, you're going to have to steal some games. And since he's been the full-time starter here in Winnipeg, at least like since the run in 2017, there isn't a single game that he's stolen in the playoffs. And you can look at every other goalie that's like in the general conversation for best goalie in the world, and every single one of them has stolen multiple playoff games. And there hasn't been a single time where that's happened. So we can talk about how bad the team is. And again, like I don't give him the full blame for every single goal that's went in, but you have to be able to steal a game. And we've seen so many of the great goalies. I mean, we just saw, a decade of Carey Price doing that for the Canadiens, and in a significantly worse environment. This is a very good Winnipeg Jets team, and obviously not having Ehlers is a big loss as well. And I don't want to downplay that, but like, you need to be able to steal a game, and maybe Game 5 is that moment. I think Game 5 is really the defining moment of Connor Hellebuyck's career so far. Like, I truly believe that. I think if he comes out and it's just okay again, it's really not going to look good. And even if the Jets end up winning that game, I don't know what the legacy is for a guy who just signed a massive contract and is going to be here for a long time. I don't know what the out is in that
and when
situation.
it comes to and when it comes to the allocating that salary cap, you're paying Connor Hellebuyck to steal games.
Yeah.
At his cap hit, he's making north of $8 million a year, long term.
Yeah.
And the goalies we've seen in the playoffs that are paid in his range are able to steal games and turn series around for teams, even when they do underperform.
Yeah.
The Jets are underperforming, but he hasn't been able to seal games. And
Yeah.
it's a big flaw in their roster construction come playoff time if you're allocating $8 million to a goalie who's just going to be okay for you. At that point, you'd rather put in an Eric Comrie and spend that money elsewhere. So really
Yeah, and I
interesting.
mean, yeah, like I even like on ice, like the Jets haven't been great. They're still 5th in the NHL in 5-on-5 expected goals percentage. Like they're still controlling play in this series. It's not like they've been bad. Like you talk about some of the other teams at the bottom of the list. I mean, Philip Gustafson is on a team that's 15th in expected goals percentage, and like we said, like I think Vegas has been a little unlucky in that series. But like Anthony Stolarz in Toronto, who we're going to talk about in a second, like they're 13th in 5-on-5 expected goals percentage. They're 3-1. Now again, granted they won 2 of those games in overtime, but like you need your goalie to be able to help seal a game for you. And when your team's like playing decent enough hockey, just being good isn't good enough when you're supposed to be the best player in the world. I like this is a guy who's going to win what, his 3rd Vezina of his career in a couple months. 2nd in a row. He won it last year. They won it last year, right? Am I crazy?
He did.
He did, yeah. Okay, good. I'm not losing my mind. But like he's somebody that's in the Hart conversation. He's been in the Hart conversation before. I've made the argument that he should have won the Hart the year Panarin won it. I like when you're in that echelon of goaltender, right? You're in the Carey Price level of goaltender. Like Carey Price would steal series for the Canadians. Like I don't see that. And even like you look at like the player polls, and I don't read into the player polls enough, but like or a ton, but like I think he was like the 3rd or 4th highest ranked goalie in terms of like which goalie you wouldn't want to face. And that just tells me that players like don't like they're not afraid of it. Because even when Price was putting up like 890 save percentages, he was number 1 in that poll. Like you don't see that same kind of fear. And maybe it's the fact that he's playing 60 plus games this season. That's something we talked about at the beginning of the year. And maybe that's the case. Is it's the wear of the season. And you saw them like play Hellebuyck in a meaningless game so that he could win the Jennings at the end of the year. And it's like, is that really like is that what we're playing for? And I like again, I don't think that one game is the tipping point of like he played too much, but like it's things like that that just kind of put into question where this team is. And I think we've been saying for years now that the Jets need a legitimate backup, and they haven't done it. And they did with Brossoit, but they didn't play Brossoit nearly enough, even when they had him. So I like maybe like if maybe Connor Hellebuyck's a goalie that needs to play 50 games a season, and that extra 10 games off will keep him engaged in this scenario, because we've seen him play in big games. Like he played really well in the Four Nations. So like I don't know. It's a very interesting situation. I'm gonna stick with Blues in 6. It was my prediction at the start of the season, at the start of the playoffs, and I don't think the Jets have shown me anything to change that. So that was a long-winded discussion, but I think it's important, especially for a team that's in this situation as the President's Trophy winner and had such a great regular season. So I'm good to move on. I don't know if you have anything else to say about this series, but
I'm ready to move on. Let's look at Colorado and Dallas again.
Also quickly before we jump onto that, quickly,
Okay.
Robert Thomas fucking rocks. He's awesome. Shout out Robert Thomas for being maybe the most underrated player in the NHL. He's unbelievable. Fantastic hockey player. Anyway, we continue. We can move on.
Top 10 center question mark.
Maybe, honestly, maybe. I love Robert Thomas, and he's been fantastic this playoffs. He's been great against the. I think he has like 14 points in 6 games against the Jets or something this season. Like it's been crazy. But he's awesome. So yeah, shout out Robert Thomas.
Been a fan of him.
Colton
for a long
Parayko looks
time.
good. I talked a lot of smack about Colton Parayko this year, but he's had a good series too. So there you go.
Well, if we're gonna shout out Blues defenseman, you got to mention Cam Fowler.
Cam Fowler, oh my god, yeah, like the change of scenery that Cam Fowler went through from Anaheim to now has obviously made a big impact on him. And that's the thing, like even in the analytics community, people can undervalue the impact of going from a bad team to a good team. And Cam Fowler's numbers in Anaheim were not very good. Cam Fowler's numbers in St. Louis have been very good. And he's looked impressive. So there you go. Anyway, Colorado, Dallas. Let's let's jump to that. First of all, obviously, the biggest story in the series has been the return of Gabriel Landeskog. And what an incredible moment for him in Game 3, and then obviously scoring in Game 4. There were so many comments on that goal from people who were at the game saying it was like the loudest they've ever heard that building, and I believe it. What an incredible! It's a shame they couldn't win that Game 4, but and it's just an incredible moment. Like the fact that he's walking, let alone playing in a playoff game, is incredible. And they had him mic'd for the first his return game, which is really cool too, because there's been a bunch of really funny clips of that, and him immediately like first shift going after Mikko Rantanen was really funny. It's been a really cool moment in a series that I think has been a little underwhelming for people. It hasn't been the clash of the tight. I mean, it's 2-2, but it hasn't been really the fireworks show that I think we all kind of expected from this one. But again, like it's 2-2. It's best of 3 now. It's gonna be interesting to see how that kind of falls out. But definitely the Gabriel Landeskog story for me at least has been the highlight of this series so far.
Absolutely. And shout out to Dallas, despite their injuries and the play from Jake Oettinger to remain in the series and have it at 2-2. Prior to Game 4, this was very close. I mean, they got blown out in Game 1. They responded with 2 overtime wins, gutsy wins in Games 2 and 3. And then Game 4, they kind of got dominated. Gabe Landeskog picked up 2 points in that game, including a goal. Yeah. What a beautiful shot that was, by the way, coming down the left side and absolutely pinpointed that past Oettinger. But Colorado's looked really dominant. I think that win and having Landeskog back in the lineup has really rejuvenated them. Yeah. And I think they pull this one out in 6. I think they win the next 2 games.
I'm going to go Colorado in 7. For me, I think Dallas probably gets 1. I'm still kind of, I still feel like they have a bit of juice in the tank, and maybe we see Miro Heiskanen at some point in the series. Maybe. And that could obviously be a big shift. Speaking of veterans who have looked pretty good, I think Jamie Benn's had a fantastic series.
Yeah.
He's somebody that has really stood out to me, especially on an offense as loaded as Dallas is. Tyler Seguin's had a pretty solid series too, but I think just the two of them have really stepped up and put up a really good effort in what could be maybe both their last runs here in Dallas. Depending on what they want. They're both getting up there in age. I think Jamie Benn is probably closer to retirement than Seguin is, but again, the injuries and everything. This really could be their last shot at this, and they both look like they're playing that way. Also, speaking of guys who got boosts in the Four Nations, I think Thomas Harley has been the best defenseman in the series. I think on both sides. He's been incredible, like just on both ends of the ice. He's been able to control play. His play driving has been great. His defensive effort has been fantastic. He's somebody that again kind of just took time off his vacation to go play for Team Canada, and I really think he was somebody who gained a lot from that experience. And he played some big minutes in that gold medal game too. Cold, like he came in, he didn't have morning skate and just was told to play. And I think that experience really has elevated his game a ton, and you're seeing it now. I mean, he has to be Dallas's number 1 defenseman on a blue line that isn't very good, and he's done a fantastic job at it. So Thomas Harley's been probably my MVP of this series thus far. And again, maybe if they can squeeze Miro Heiskanen back for a Game 7, that could be a big difference maker too. But we'll see. As of now, I'm probably going to stick with Colorado in 7. I think they split the next 2, and then we see a very good Game 7, hopefully.
I even think we're seeing Thomas Harley push for that top 10, 15 defenseman in the NHL now too at such a young age, and he's been super impressive, and things are only going to get easier for him once Miro Heiskanen returns, whether it's to close out this series or at the start of next season. I'm really interested to see what Dallas does. Looking a little bit into the future, Jamie Benn's coming off that $9 million cap hit. Seguin will be coming off that. I believe not next season, but the year after. So they're going to open up a lot of space over the next year or two, and they already have. And now bringing in Mikko Rantanen, you get a full year of Mikko Rantanen. I think it's going to be really interesting to see what this Dallas Stars team ends up being now that they've locked up guys like Wyatt Johnston and stuff like that. So,
Yeah, like
but
their core is pretty locked up. I mean, Jake Ottinger just signed. I don't know how many years he has left in his. I think he signed a 5-year deal a couple years ago, like 3 years ago. So he's got 3 years left on that. Um, but yeah, getting that $18 million off the book plus the cap going up like $15 million over the next like 3 years. They're set up to be a really dangerous team for the next like decade.
yeah,
And
so
that's fun.
my point with that is that even if they do end up losing this series to Colorado because they have arguably their best forward and their best defenseman out of the lineup, although you can make a case
Yeah.
for Harley over Heiskanen at this point with all the injuries,
Yeah.
I think you could. I think for Dallas fans, this isn't the end all be all. If you end up losing this series, Colorado absolutely loaded up at the trade deadline, and you're going to have another shot at it
Oh
come
yeah,
next year when you're fully
for sure.
healthy. So props to Dallas for remaining in this series and keeping it this close against this good of a Colorado Avalanche team. And hopefully these last couple games are a little more exciting than the
Yeah.
first few have. So
And the thing about Dallas too is if they can get out of the series, like they will have Miro Heiskanen back for the second round based on everything that we've seen. So like you're kind of just like there that's like a sleeping giant just waiting to get fully like activated. And that's terrifying because like if they can squeak out 2 wins in the next 3 games, which is very possible, that's another team that I think could just dominate the Western Conference, especially from what we've seen in the West. I think as soon as they get Heiskanen back, a lot of their deficiencies on the blue line just disappear because now you can spread out him and Harley and they can play basically the entire game. Like you can play whatever 80-90% of the game with one of those guys on the ice plus their offense. And Jake Ottinger hasn't been fully himself either. So man, like Dallas could be a scary, scary team if they can get out of this round. And that's a big if because Colorado looks pretty good, but I'd be afraid to play the Stars moving forward, even though their numbers haven't been very good in the series.
yeah,
They're actually last in the NHL in expected in 5-on-5 expected goals for percentage. So, but again, I think a lot of that has to do with the deficiencies on the blue line. So they're a team that could go off if they can get out of round one.
absolutely. And considering Jason Robertson's one of the most active players in front of the net in the NHL, he accumulates a lot of their expected goals. So that's also been a huge loss for them as well.
Absolutely. So yeah, I guess we move on to the Eastern Conference now, which it's really funny. All the West series have been 2-2, and well, one of the series in the East only has 3 games, but the other ones are all 3-1. So it's very interesting to see how that's played out so far. But no sweeps in round one, which I think was a concern. Like that was a real concern I had after the first 2 games, because most of the series were 2-0.
Yeah,
there wasn't very many that were 2-2 or 2-1-1. So there was a lot of concern that round one was going to be kind of a snooze fest, and then the flip to the lower seeds being at home kind of changed the trajectory of this round one. It's actually turned out pretty good. But we'll start with Toronto and Ottawa, which I think this series has been a lot outside of game one. This series has been a way more competitive series than the 3-1 record indicates. And I think that's kind of true. One of the other 2 3-1 series as well. I think that game 4 loss is interesting to see how Toronto comes back from it, because obviously they're going home. I truly believe if they lose game 5, they're in trouble. Like just based on what we've seen so far, I think the series has been a lot closer than the 3-1 indicates. Obviously, the 2 overtime games have a big factor in that. Losing game 5 at home, losing game 4 is fine. I expected that to happen. That's usually what happens when a team's up 3-1 a lot of the times. There's just desperate hockey with your life on the line and you'll win a game. If Toronto loses at home in game 5, I'd be legitimately concerned. That's kind of where I'm at with the series. Because then as soon as you lose that game 5, you're going back to Ottawa, and then all the demons and all the ghosts come out, and you're in Ottawa. And man, that would be I think game 5 is basically game 7 for Toronto at this point. Like they have to get this done. And they can. Like they've won 3 of the games already. And I don't think Ottawa's look like these world beaters, but man, I'd be concerned if the Leafs lose game 5.
I agree with you there. And I think this is some of the best hockey we've seen Toronto play in the playoffs in a long time, too.
I agree.
Granted, I know the Senators aren't the most worthy opponent. We've seen them play some much better Boston Bruins teams over the
Yeah.
recent years, but like, man, watching like William Nylander, Mitch Marner, like really lock in at the end of that third period, even to get that fourth game tied up, like they were locked in. Like you could see the intent behind Nylander's skating and the look
Mhm.
on his face in the broadcast. Like you could see Toronto really wanted to close this out. And while Jake Sanderson put in a nice shot from the point to end it and send it to game five, I think Toronto's going to close it out in this fifth game on home ice.
I think so too.
I think having Craig Berube behind the bench this time instead of Sheldon Keefe, you have a little bit different of a personnel, somebody that's been through these experiences, has won a Stanley Cup with the St. Louis Blues. I think they were in good hands under Craig Berube, and I think they pull this out.
Yeah, I'd more or less agree with that. I do think that Stolarz has had a pretty solid series.
Yes.
As well. He's been able to keep them in games when that's been there. I think he's definitely been better than Ullmark has this series, especially in that game one. Although Ullmark's bounced back since that brutal game one look as well. The thing that would worry me for the Senators, they just don't really have another card to play. Like I don't know, like there's no real like ace up their sleeve to get them back in the series. They kind of just have to run it back and hope that it works. Because again, you lost 2 of the games in overtime. Those could be a coin flip. Obviously you won one in overtime too, so like it works both ways. But I think at this point you just kind of just have to run it back and hope for the best. If you're Ottawa, you just kind of have to trust in the team that's been built, and I think it's a solid roster. So, like you said, I think this probably is Toronto in 5 at this point. But if Toronto loses game 5, I'm probably going to Ottawa in 7. Like that's how important I think this game is, just for the mental aspect for this Leafs team, regardless of who. Like I don't think Berube can overcome what a game 5 loss would do to the doubt that would creep in for everybody that's on this team that was there for more than a season.
That's fair.
That's how mentally important this game is. And I also think if Toronto wins game 5, like they're a team that can go on a run too. Because then you're definitively winning a series, right? Like the Tampa Bay series was great, but that was their Stanley Cup when they won it. Winning a series in 5 definitively here, getting that time off, getting to reset, kind of recheck your emotions, especially for a Tampa Bay Florida series that, based on tonight, could go 7. This is like that would be a very, very big moment, and it would allow them to reset. And that's really important in the playoffs. I don't know if that happens even if the series does go 7 and Toronto pulls it out. I don't know if I'd feel the same way, but that's why I think this game is the biggest game of the series.
And even looking at that Russ Elm win too, even if this Tampa Florida series doesn't go 7 and Toronto wins in 5, they're beating the crap out of each other in this series. We've seen some of the hits that
Absolutely.
Barkov and Jake Gensel have been on the receiving end of, and tempers are going to flare in game 4 tonight. I'm really excited to see what happens after game 2. You had the Barkov hit, which Hagel got suspended for. He's now back. And game 3, you had Matthew Tkachuk blow up Jake Gensel on the empty net going open ice. So it's going to be really interesting to see how Toronto or even Ottawa, if they can make a comeback matchup against the winner of this Battle of Florida. So Atlantic's definitely been a little more interesting than I've anticipated so far. But I think this Leafs Senators series has lived up to the hype. It's the Blood of Ontario has been great,
Yeah, it's been
and
fun.
excited to see who pulls it out.
Yeah, it's been a fun series that might end in 5 games. Like it doesn't feel like it's been a 5-game series if that's the case. If Toronto wins. Obviously game 1 was what it was, but 2, 3, and 4 have all been really good games. Obviously all going to overtime. I think game 5 is probably close as well. But yeah, I think I'll take Toronto in 5 with the caveat that losing this game might mean they lose the series.
I can get behind that.
Which is a crazy like way to word this, and I don't think that would work for any other team. But just based on the psychological factors of losing this game, that'd be big. But I do think that they're the favorite going into this game, and as they should be heading into that one. But as you mentioned, Tampa Bay, Florida, only 3 games in the series. The Panthers in the first 2 games. Every question that we had about this team coming in cold and coming in hurt and banged up and tired, they just put to bed again. Very similar to how they did last year. And game 3, we talked about it a little bit before the podcast, but I think it was probably Tampa Bay's best game of the season in the situation they were in. But man, Florida looks like a buzzsaw again. Like their forwards, like their defensive system is so reliant on their forward core. And I think that's really interesting because they're like the only team in the league that does that. Tampa Bay did it a little bit like during their 3 straight cup runs, but I don't think they did it to the effectiveness of what Florida does. And because Florida's defense hasn't been that great. Like none of their defenders have played particularly well.
Unless you're Nate Schmidt.
Well, yeah, Nate Schmidt's been like Nate Schmidt for the Conn Smythe at this point. But like, like, uh, their forward core is so important to how their defensive structure works, and they've been so good at it, even in the game, like even in game 3, to a bit of a lesser extent, but like the first 2 games especially, like you really saw the peak of this Paul Maurice system and kind of how he's wanted to run. And I think one of the issues that he had in Winnipeg especially is he just didn't have the players to run that system. Like you weren't going to get Kyle Connor and Mark Scheifele to buy into playing elite defense. It was never going to happen, and they were going to play 22 minutes a night. Whereas here in Florida, like everybody's able to buy in, and it's looked really really good. And it's made me more and more curious to see if this is a good landing spot for somebody like a Nikolai Ehlers, who I think is going to take a bit of a pay cut just because he's not playing in the series. So it'd be kind of interesting to see the although Paul Maurice hated Nikolai Ehlers and never played him, it's just kind of one of those fantasy spots for me because I think he'd fit really well into that kind of defensive system. But I'm curious to know your thoughts on this one. You've obviously been covering this one a bit closer than the other series, but I've been really impressed with the Panthers so far.
Yeah, I've watched every minute of this series so far, and I will be continuing to do so tonight. But a few notes I have is, one, I forgot how good Matthew Tkachuk was watching these first few games. Like, he's been absent since the Four Nations with injury, but upon return, I know we were talking about some of the best swingers in the league last week when we were mentoring Kucherov, Pastrnak, Kaprizov. Matthew Tkachuk, like you said last week, is right up there in that conversation. He's looked amazing, scoring a few goals. He's got 3 goals in 3 games so far. Another note I have is that Vasilevsky was a little shaky in the first couple games, letting in that goal in game 2 from really far out with no screen or deflection. And then in that one goal was the difference. And then in game 1, he completely crapped the bed, but looked really good in game 3. He kind of weathered the storm for them until the first line got their feet underneath them and were able to pot a few goals in net. And shout out to Jake Gensel, who's just unbelievable in any sort of best on best and playoff scenario. At the Four Nations, we saw how good he was. Playoffs for Pittsburgh and Carolina, he was great. He's continuing to be Tampa Bay's best player leading the charge here now. So really good. So star wingers on both ends. And I'm excited to see how this goes with some of the hits that we've seen. Definitely been one of the more physical series, and hopefully Tampa Bay gets this tied up. I think it's more interesting to see 2-2. I hope this one goes 7 and not like 5 or 6. So
I agree. What are your predictions for this? Are you sticking with Tampa Bay? I think you had Tampa in 7. I think I had Tampa in 7 too at the beginning.
I might have said Tampa in 6, but I don't know. I might take Florida in 6 or 7 just based on what I've seen. It's tough though.
This game is really going to be a big determinant, obviously, because the other series we have 4 games on. This one we only have 3. I think whoever wins game 4 wins it in 7. That's gonna be my prediction. The winner of game 4 wins in 7. Let's go with that. That's a bit of a cop out, but
I like it. All right, I can get behind that.
That's how I'm feeling this. Even though the Panthers, we have 3-1 at that point. I think the series has been close enough that Tampa Bay could win 2 in a row. But there you go. That's my cop out pick for this one. But there's only been 3 games. I don't know. What do you want from me? Moving on to the Metro, and this has really been the tale of 2. Both these series are 3-1, but I think they felt like very different series going in here. We'll start with Montreal and Washington, and despite being down 3-1, like I think this has been like the perfect series for the Montreal Canadiens. This is kind of exactly what I expected from them. But a very hard fought pushback that they had, especially in game 1, was really, really good to see after getting kind of railroad in the first 2 periods. Game 2, we didn't see as much of that pushback, and then obviously game 3, they just dominated. In game 4, I think they were the better team for most of it, up until the last like 5 or 6 minutes where Washington kind of took over. But Washington came in as the better team, and like I said, I think this like Capitals in 6 feels like the prediction I'm going to stick with. Maybe Capitals in 5 at this point, but I expected a really good effort from the Canadiens. And I think if you're a Canadiens fan watching this series, obviously you can be a little disappointed. I think a lot of people have complained about the officiating. I'm not somebody who buys into that. I think every game has bad officiating, but overall, like when you look back at the series, regardless of whether or not they lose in 5, you got to be pretty happy overall as a Canadiens fan, because it's not even just the fact that this team's been competitive; it's the fact that it's all of their young players that are making it competitive. Like their best play, if you were to list like the 7 best Montreal Canadiens in this series, every single one of them is under the age of 25, and I think that is outside of Sam Montembeault. Like that. I think he might even be 25. I don't know, but like with the exception of Montembeault, the best players for the Montreal Canadiens this year have been their young stars, and that is such a scary thought for the rest of the NHL, and it's such a great thing to see for the Canadiens. But in saying that, this is going to be Washington in 5 or 6. I can't see the Canadiens winning 3 in a row, especially if Montembeault's not playing. Although Dovich had a good enough game in game 4. It's about as good as you could have expected. I think this series kind of went exactly how I thought it would, and I think both teams' fan bases should be pretty happy with how it's been so far.
Is it time for full AI referees in the NHL?
No, that's a whole other argument. But I'm very much a fan of the inconsistent human calls. I think it makes the games more interesting. But some Canadiens fans might disagree with me on that.
I gave a presentation today for 10 minutes on if AI should be integrated full time into refereeing for sports.
It's interesting. I don't disagree with the baseball question on it, just with like the balls and strikes, and the MLB I think is implementing that. I think that's like official now that's the thing that's going to come. But I don't know. It's a complicated issue.
And what I did in the presentation was I talked about sort of the sports culture and how in the NHL fighting is a big part of the hockey's culture. And I played the clip of Josh Anderson and Tom Wilson fighting in the bench for the whole class. And I said, how is AI going to be able to separate this? Tom Wilson's going to punch somebody's face in, and how is AI going to be able to break this up? So
yeah, that's fair.
Really interesting point from the Canadiens Capitals series for you. But I do think Washington wins this 1 in 6. That was my initial prediction.
Yeah.
I think Montreal's going to go on the road. From what I've seen, I really like their fight in this series. I think they got one out on the road here. But I think they get too excited and they come back home and there's just too much pressure, and Washington with some of the more sound veterans wins in 6. But just what I expected from Montreal. And just seeing guys like Lane Hutson, Nick Suzuki, Cole Caulfield, even Ivan Devanov these last game or two has looked a lot more comfortable.
Play in the power play in game 4. Oh my God, that pass was incredible. He's gonna be so dangerous on that power play.
It's so cool. Season. You see like the mini midget core in Montreal under Marty St. Louis. Everyone's gonna be 5'7", 5'8", and they're gonna be great for the next 10 years. So
I love it. Hell yeah, let's lean into that. Just keep drafting small players. It works so well.
Marty's mini Montreal Canadiens, what we'll call it.
I love it. The one thing that I've really noticed in the series that I think is interesting, and it didn't really hurt them in game 4, but I dove into it a little bit. Marc Denis tweeted it out, and I was kind of curious, and I looked into it, and it was the fact that Lane Hutson just doesn't shoot on the power play. And if you watch now I'm not a big the defenseman should spray shots from the point, but you have to have a bit of like, if this power play is going to run as efficiently as it should, and assuming that it's going to be Slafkovsky, Caulfield, Suzuki, Demidov, and Hutson is kind of the main pieces on it. Ideally, you have Ivan Demidov as your puck, as the primary puck carrier, kind of in that below the net area. I think he's the best puck handler of those 5. But if Lane Hutson's not going to be a shooter, he has in the 200 and I think it was 30 minutes of power play time that he's played this season, he has 10 shots. That's just not. And now he was the primary puck carrier for most of that season, so it's a little bit different because he's going to pull a defenseman anyway. But as soon as he lost the puck, and you saw this a lot in the series so far, Washington just kind of drops all 4 of the defenders below the hash marks, because they know that if he gets the puck, he is not going to one-time it. There's a 0% chance that he's shooting that puck. And I think that, especially if Demidov is going to be the primary puck carrier for Montreal, that kind of makes Lane Hutson irrelevant, and makes it a lot easier to defend this power play. So my one piece of advice would be just to get Lane Hutson just to take a shot, once a power play, just get the puck and just rip it right off a pass. just so that defender has to be honest and like and you can pull somebody a little bit, because then that's going to give Demidov so much more room. And we've seen what he's done in spurts here, just getting kind of thrown into this roster with a little bit of space and giving him like that much more space. This could be one of the best power plays in the NHL next year if they can kind of figure that out. And that's really scary, because again, most of these players are like, outside of Suzuki, everybody's under the age, it's like 24, 23. So that's a really scary thought. But that would be my one tweak that I've noticed, especially in this series. But outside of that, I mean, yeah, like Canadiens fans should be really happy with this, despite the fact that the series isn't going how they obviously would like it to. But I don't think there's gonna be any big massive comebacks from the Canadiens. But in terms of like teams losing series, I don't think there should be a fan base happier with how the season's went than the Montreal Canadiens. They're the one.
Oh yeah.
Should be extremely, obviously, because like they got into the playoffs and nobody expected them to, but they've also put up a pretty good fight against the number one seed in the West, in the Eastern Conference, with a backup goalie potentially for the rest of the series.
I just pulled up a quick stat. I think that's really interesting. Going off your Lane Hutson shooting point, I just took 100. All the defensemen in the NHL that played at least 100 minutes on the power play this year in the regular season.
Yeah.
And I have their individual shots per 60. Can you guess where Lane Hutson ranks?
Probably last, I'd assume.
Last.
Very close. Yeah, last. Exactly. And for like, this is somebody who put up like 70 points this season. Like he's an offensive defenseman. Just shoot the puck. He had like 100. I think he had like 95 shots this year, or something like that. Like, just like take one shot like every 2 power plays, just so you can.
He's no power behind it though. That's the thing.
It doesn't matter, but just for the threat of a deflection or a tip or a rebound, just like anything. It doesn't even like have to be a hard shot, but just something that's gonna. Because like I legitimately think that like the Canadiens should almost, and this is gonna sound crazy because like Lane Hutson's such a dynamic offensive player, but I think the Canadiens power play would be far more efficient if him and Demidov are on different units, because they can both be the primary puck carriers. Because Demidov's the most dangerous when he has the puck on his stick, and so is Lane Hutson. And I think it would almost be better just to it would probably be Hutson at that point, and you move him to the second unit and just let him be the quarterback on the second unit. Like, I think that would be, like, if Line is there next year, and who knows what the situation is there, then throw Line on that second unit and you have your shot option. Like, I think that honestly makes makes both units far more dangerous, even though it's going to hurt Hutson's power play totals and his point totals are going to drop. Like, I just think both guys need to have the puck if Hutson's not going to shoot. It just doesn't make sense, because then you're basically just playing 4-on-4.
That's fair.
So, I don't know. Like, that's
the differential too is crazy, because he has 2.4 shots per 60. 51st place is 4.4 for Jamie Drysdale. So that's a 2-shot difference just from 51 to 52.
That's
which
crazy.
Is crazy.
So yeah, like just shoot the puck a little bit more, please.
Speaking of defensemen that like to shoot on the power play, which would be Dougie Hamilton, we can jump into the last series.
Yeah.
Who ranks first in that category, by the way, for that list I pulled up?
That's great. Yeah, that sounds about right. This series kind of went about as I expected. Carolina's looked like the better team pretty well all the way through it. Jacob Markstrom's had a solid series. Nobody on the Devils has really jumped out as like somebody who's going to be able to save this team, and that's fine, because the guy who's supposed to do that is sitting in the press box. Is that like, I guess the broader discussion, like, I'm assuming you're taking Carolina in the series to close it out in 5 or 6.
Taking Carolina in 5.
Yeah, I'm with that as well. So I guess the more interesting question here is, first of all, Carolina's looked really good. I think it's also kind of interesting that Logan Stankoven has more points than Mikko Rantanen right now. I just want to point that out. Just throwing that out there. The Eric Tulsky masterclass has come full circle. But I think the more interesting discussion is like for the Devils, because like the thing right now is like, obviously they have the injury to Jack Hughes, and that's like the big thing that's hanging over them. But Jack Hughes is somebody that like has been hurt every single season of his career. So like, is like Jason Robertson's hurt in Dallas right now, and he's arguably their best player. Obviously Mikko Rantanen might have an argument there. But like Dallas is 2-2 against a team that's significantly better. I think we can all agree that Colorado is probably in a better position than Carolina is right now. And even if you disagree with that, I think Dallas has looked better than New Jersey has as a whole. Is this Devils team just not built optimally with like a second option? Like, are they in need of acquiring another all top tier offensive player, because I like the way this team is built when they're fully healthy. I had them as my number one ranked team going into the season for that reason. But the big question was, can they stay healthy? And I think that question has come up every single year they've been in the playoffs. So I wonder if this is the right mix of players based on who their best player is.
And I have a couple notes on that because I did grow up watching the Devils a lot, especially in high school. Since I'm from New Jersey, I was at a ton of games at the Prudential Center, especially that 2023 season when they made it to face Carolina in the second round. And I was probably at like 10, 12 of those games that year. And I just think this team lives and dies by Jack Hughes. I hate to say it, but the swagger that this team has when Jack Hughes is in the lineup versus when he's not, I think it's just absolutely insane. It's like night and day. And I think the whole thing is that when they brought in Timo Meier a couple years ago, I think he was sort of envisioned as that Matthew Tkachuk kind of big power forward piece to sort of step up, and he hasn't. And I think even they would want more from a guy like Jesper Bratt. I think he's been a little disappointing in this series. I was hoping he was going to step up considering he was top 15 in scoring this year for the NHL. So I think it's been a lack of production from Timo Meier. It has been Jesper Bratt maybe not stepping up as much as we'd expect him to. I mean, I think Nico Hischier's had a good season. I think the defense is pretty good and has a good trajectory. I think Jacob Markstrom is a good answer in net, but it's just that this team seems to live or die off Jack Hughes, and I can't figure out why. Yeah, it's so hard to explain.
It's very interesting. I think like all the guys you named, like I really like. I like Timo Meier. I think hasn't been great in New Jersey, but he's still a solid player. You look at somebody like Bratt and Hischier, and I think the big thing is like I really like all those players, but I really like all those players as like my second, third, and fourth option. And that's the problem, because like you look at some of the better teams, right? Like take Dallas for example, right? I've been talking about Dallas a bit, but like Jason Robertson's out, and you look around that team, and it's like, well, they have Mikko Rantanen, who had like I said 100-point season like every year he's been in the league. So it's like, and I get they just added him, but even like you look at other teams, like you have like Florida, for instance, right? Like they have like Barkov, they have Huberdeau, they have a ton of others, or I'm not Huberdeau, Tkachuk. I'm just so used to the Barkov Huberdeau pairing, but they have like two guys that are number one guys. You look at Toronto, and whether or not you like Marner or Nylander, I think there's a very strong case that Mitch Marner could be the best player on a team. And that team would be really good. Maybe not William Nylander, but like still, right? Like he's your third guy. I don't really see that in New Jersey as much as I love those players. Like I love Jesper Bratt. I'm a huge Nico Hischier fan, but like neither of those guys are top of the lineup guys, and I don't think Timo Meier even was. Like even when he was in his best days in San Jose, I never really viewed him as like a true like top 10 winger in the league at any point, or like a guy who can be the best player on a strong cup team, right? Like I think that's kind of the issue here. And obviously, if they have Jack Hughes, all those problems go away. But like Jack Hughes has never been there, and this has become a yearly discussion with the Devils. And I think it's going to be very interesting to see how they play it this offseason. I think it's likely that they kind of just stick with the status quo and run it back, because that's the most logical thing to do, because you had an injury. But eventually, like the discussion is going to have to come of whether or not this team is built. Is the right mix of players based on the situation that your best player is probably going to play 60 games and might not be there for the playoffs. And you can keep switching the coaching as much as you want. I don't think it's a coaching issue at all. I just think that's kind of the question. And it's not even that they've done a bad job building the team, because I really like the roster. But it just might be a bad mix based on the circumstances of where your best player is.
I agree.
And that's such a unique situation. Like I don't think there's another team in the league that has the same situation. Like it's such a unique, because I think in you take any other top 15 player, 20 player in the NHL, depending on where you have Jack Hughes, and you swap them, and New Jersey's a cup contender because this roster is really good, right? Like you put like if you switch Jack Hughes with Jack Eichel, for instance, like this isn't a discussion. We're looking at this team where we'd be like, oh my god, Tom Fitzgerald built this fantastic roster, and Jack Eichel's awesome, and this team's going to win the Stanley Cup this year. Yeah, and like, and it's not like it's not a flaw of the GM either. Like I don't know. Like, there's nobody to blame. It's just the situation that they're in, and it's really weird. I don't know what you do to fix it, because I don't think it's just plugging in like another superstar, like, because then you have to gut the roster. Um, I it's a very strange situation. And hopefully Jack Hughes plays all next year, and this question doesn't matter. New Jersey wins the Stanley Cup, and everything's fine. But like, it's very interesting to see how this is, and a lot of people are going to get blamed, and I don't really think it's anybody's fault. Like,
Yeah, and
legitimately, I don't know.
I feel like you look at all these teams that have been really close in recent years too, right? You have Florida, you have Kachuk, Barkov, you have two stars right there. Let's look at Edmonton, McDavid, Draisaitl, Colorado, McKinnon, Ranson, and McCarr. Vegas, they have Eichel, Stone. Like, all the pieces they've always had a safety net, and it just feels like New Jersey hasn't had that safety net. And
Mhm.
Jack Hughes just happens to be a really frail player, which is fine
Yeah,
because when he's healthy, he's really damn good.
yeah,
And I just can't figure out the phenomenon of why this team just like crawls in a ditch and dies when he's not playing. It's really
yeah.
fascinating. It is
Yeah,
really fascinating to me. It's almost
it
as
really
if
is.
like Jack Hughes is like the model star, pretty boy, of the New Jersey Devils, and all the fans love him, and all the Instagram girls are obsessed with him. And he's not in the lineup. The Devils are just almost irrelevant. I hate to say it, but like
Yeah.
nearly irrelevant. Like there was absolutely zero confidence in the fan base going into this series without Jack Hughes, and that's incredible to me that there was zero faith. Like I feel like any other fan base would turn around and be like, "Oh, like we still have a chance. Like we have
Yeah.
so and so," and the Devils are just like, "Oh, like next year."
I think
It's really
the
interesting.
the only logical answer to this problem, I've solved it. I figured it out. The only logical answer is they signed Quinn Hughes, right?
Yeah.
Like, that's how you fix the problem, is you bring Quinn Hughes in. Like, that's it. You use the Dougie Hamilton money, and you sign Quinn Hughes. Like that. I solved the issue. Like, the problem solved. You have another great top 10 player, um, who also has slight injury issues. Maybe not to the extent as Jack does, but maybe it's just a frail family. Because like Luku's had injury problems too. Maybe it's just something in that the Hughes bloodline. But that's it. I fixed the problem. You just sign Quinn Hughes,
Yeah, so
and
now you
you're
will
on the
not
star.
be seeing a New Jersey Devils fixed offseason from us.
Yeah, there you go. It's done. Like that. I don't know what else you want. Like, it's the only realistic option, right? Like, I'm not even kidding. Like, it really is, like, because I like, this isn't going to be a Mitch Marner team. Um, I, I'd assume not. Um,
Every
like,
team's a Mitch Marner team. Let's
it's
make
true.
that clear.
Yeah. Um, San Jose Sharks, congratulations. Um, but like, really, like, I don't know what else you do. Like, I think that's the only answer to the problem. Is you do everything you can to get Quinn Hughes, because then at least you have, because obviously the story is great, but like at least you'd have like another viable number one option as like an offensive threat, and I think he'd bring that same kind of like swagger to, like, we've seen that in Vancouver when when he is and isn't in the lineup. Like, they're a different team too, so like I think you'd get that similar structure, and I don't know, like, I'm fantasy booking now, but like I think that's the answer to the problem. Like, I don't see another, like, unless you're a team that's going to trade for David Pastrnak. Like, I don't see another,
Uh-oh.
like,
Are we
we
starting
already
with
did that
the
though.
Boston
Yeah,
to New Jersey now?
we already started. No, but like, there's nobody else available. Like, I don't know how you get somebody that can bring that, like, kind of like, not just the play, right? Because I don't think, like a Mitch Marner, for instance, has the skill level to be like your number one guy, but I don't think he has the aura of what New Jersey, like, of what Jack Hughes has, right? But like David Pastrnak would, and like Quinn Hughes would. So like, I don't know. That's how you fix the New Jersey Devils. There you
Let's
go.
go Pasternak to New Jersey in exchange for Jesper Bratt and a ton of other assets. There you go.
Yeah, they have to pay. They have the assets. They have a good prospect pool. Like, New Jersey's so well built. Like, I don't like, it's really frustrating because this team, like, eventually it's gonna lose. It's gonna like, this is gonna lead to everybody in the front office losing their jobs, and none of them deserve to have that. Like, it's such a weird situation where it's like, I can't even point to like a single move that like I haven't like absolutely, that like I've objectively hated that they've done. Like I didn't love the Eric Howla signing. Like that's that's the level of where we're at. Like with how this team's been constructed. Like I have no issues with it, but it's just like I I don't know. I don't know what you do to fix this team. And unfortunately, like if they bow out in the first round again next year, I don't know how many times you can keep using our best player was hurt as an excuse to keep your job. Like it's a league that you have to win in, and I don't know where that line is, and it's unfortunate because I think this team's like one of the best built teams in the NHL when they're fully healthy. Yeah, other than that, Carolina's looked fine. This is a playoff episode. I don't know. I actually don't know like who I take in a Washington Carolina series going to next round because I think both teams have had interesting enough opponents where like I don't think they've really had to. I think Washington more has had to kind of test their resilience, but I don't think they've done like a great job of it. Game 4 they did, but like other than that, like I think that like as soon as the Canadians pushed back in game 1 and 2, like Washington kind of just let it happen, and then game 3 they didn't have any pushback. So it's interesting to me, but I think like it's a toss up series because I haven't really seen anything from either team that's made me like definitively believe in one or the other, based on their first round opponents.
Yeah, I think it's going to be one Toronto, Tampa, or Florida in the Stanley Cup final.
Yeah, I just don't know if the Metro has the horde, but maybe they do. I don't like we just haven't seen it from any of them because they haven't really had an opportunity to show it. So
they just haven't been tested. That's all.
Yeah, exactly. Which again could be a good thing because like the Atlantic's going to test you, especially if it's Tampa or Florida coming out. Like they're going to be in absolute dogfights because the Toronto series probably goes 6 or 7. That's the benefit. Maybe we do see a Washington or Carolina in the Stanley Cup final just based on that. But yeah, it's interesting. The East I think is a lot muddier than the West is. At this moment, I think there's definitely like 2 or 3 teams in the West that I could look at and be like, yeah, like the Dallas Colorado winner and then the LA Edmonton winner are probably like the favorites based on what we've seen to ride out of the West. Whereas in the East, like it could be any of the 4 just based on how the brackets shook out. I think that's kind of fascinating.
I'm with you there.
Yeah. But anyway, that's the bracket. This has been a fun episode. We will be back next week. Well, maybe depending on when the first round ends. We'll have our second round prediction, and that will kind of replace the episode next week, kind of what we did in the first round.
So let me see when the first round ends.
I think it's supposed to be the 4th or the 5th.
The Monday. Is it Monday
or
if
Sunday? It's Monday. That's perfect. Okay, yeah. So fine. We'll have our episode come out on Tuesday then, probably, because I'm sure there'll be at least one game 7. So like it'll.
Let's see. I'm checking the calendar right now.
Pushback.
So there will be Sunday. So Sunday is the last game 7 for Tampa, okay. Florida. There'll be 4 game 7s on Sunday, May 4th.
Okay. So yeah, we'll probably just be out on next week.
Yeah, we'll record Monday.
Yeah. Okay.
It'll be like the first game of round 2, but
ignore everything I just said. We'll be at the regular schedule. Unless every series ends in 6 and then they push the second round up, but I doubt that's gonna happen. Yeah, thank you for watching. If you enjoyed, like the video. If you're watching on YouTube, rate us on Apple and Spotify, and follow us on Instagram for updates and stuff and when episodes are coming out. And yeah, thank you for listening, and we'll see you next week.